Hey everyone, it's Axel Toss. I hope you're doing well. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. I recently mentioned that I'd be doing free coaching in Rocket League and StarCraft, and you can still take advantage of that. Check out the description. But a commentator actually reached out to me and just wanted to talk to me about broadcasting. So I said, why not? And we did it, and I recorded it. Unfortunately, I messed up and I wasn't able to record the whole thing, but this is a good portion of it. So hopefully it is useful or interesting to you. It's also going to be on SoundCloud, so you should be able to download the MP3 from there if you're interested. Let's get into it. There can be so much you can learn from traditional sports. So I don't know what traditional sports you're into, but that's something that I've always tried to practice. Is I mentioned it earlier, but like going and watching, traditional sports. Um, I believe taking the best of there's things that make esports amazing, but
Yeah.
there are still things that make traditional sports amazing. So taking the best from rather than completely cutting off T sports, rather than just calling, just say, okay, let's do our own thing. I believe we should be taking the best of what traditional sports has had to offer. So when I go on camera, I really try to exemplify kind of that sports look, like a professional sports
Mhm.
commentator, but also I'm goofy enough, I make jokes, I interact with the chat. There are things I do to to bring it to the modern broadcast standards that people are looking for. So, and these are just my opinions, but I wanted to share them. Where it's like, look, esports is great because it's a little zany when you're on camera. You're with your friends, you're watching a game, it's fun. And that's important to build into what you're presenting. But at the same time, I'm imagining people who are coming in who have never seen it before, and they're like, "What's going on?" So I think it's very important to really, and again, everyone will have their own approach to it, and will have their own unique approach to it. But this is for me. It's like, look, I'm going to try to be very clear with my words. I'm going to try to have a really nice vocabulary. I'm going to try to have really nice cadence. Make sure everyone can understand what I'm saying and how I'm saying it, and really try to fit that professional demeanor where people come in and like, oh wow, this is pretty cool. But at the same time, I'm gonna make a joke. I'm gonna make fun of the chat. I'm gonna
Yeah.
call out Twitter in a weird way. I'm gonna do some other stuff that makes it unique and not as rigid as what you might expect from a traditional sports broadcast. So that's kind of in the direction of how I think about it. And I guess a point I was trying to make too, in regards to that with your commentary is like, okay, when you're going into a match, when you're doing Rocket League specifically, is it a play by play guy and an analytical guy? Is that it? Is it black and white like that? I don't necessarily agree with that. I think, and I was watching this VOD, and you guys were kind of doing what I'm talking about right now, where it's like,
Mhm.
look, you have a guy who's mostly play by play, but that doesn't mean you mute or you disregard conversation, because that's something that
That's
can break that up a little bit. If you just have a rigid play by play analytical system, it can get boring, and you can lose some chemistry between the casters because maybe they're not as conversational. And I believe, conversational commentary can be remarkable. And obviously it depends on
amazing.
the
Yeah.
stage. Like if you're commentating a smaller tournament versus, you're at the Olympics. Okay, sure. Maybe it's a little different. But in general, in most cases, that conversational commentary can be super cool. So in the topic of like play by play versus analytical, you say you prefer color, that's great. Maybe that's something you look out for, is like, okay, in your co-commentator, if they're a play-by-play guy, less towards the arguably monotonous, rigid, okay, I'm gonna do a play-by-play, then you do a color. Okay, I'm gonna do a play-by-play call, all right, and then you do a color. Maybe try mixing in more of that conversational, but still sticking to that that formula where you're mostly the color guy, but you're also able to bring in conversation with your play-by-play guy. It's not like they're just there to say what's on the screen. They're going to engage with what
Yeah.
you're saying too. And I felt like when I was watching the VOD you sent me, you guys are doing that a little bit. So I just wanted to comment on that. It's pretty cool.
It's so the guy that I was casting with Bacon is actually the first time that I casted with him. Um but I remember literally after the broadcast and like during it as well, I was just having so much fun with it. And there's another guy in the scene that I cast a lot with who is very rigid on play by play. And that's not a bad thing. But I feel myself like I'm having more fun doing these
Dude,
type
you're
of
spot
broadcasts
on.
where yeah. And it's funny also, like some of the points that you're bringing up. I remember back when Lawler had just left. I think he went on to Poddy C, so with
Mm-hmm.
Cole and Stumpy,
Mm-hmm.
and he was bringing up almost the exact same points that you're bringing up now, where it's like Silent is very rigid on that color by play, and then he was talking about. I think he brought up Johnny together with Shogun during DreamHacks, where they go for a more conversational style. That he really enjoyed listening to that as well, and I think um, for me myself, I definitely think that there's pros for both sides. It's just very important to know for yourself why you're going for a certain style, and definitely get practice in with multiple different styles so that you can basically work with anyone, like you said before.
Yeah, dude, I find myself agreeing with you, and I want to be clear too. Like, I don't know. Like, it's I'm not trying to say
Yeah,
that
hundred percent.
this or that is the right way. I'm trying to figure it out myself, and I have opinions, and I'm enjoying this conversation because I'm learning more from you too. I mean, that's part of it. We're all kind of figuring this out. But I love the point you just made. It's very important, and I actually have it written down over here that I was going to bring up, which is fun, right? It's simple, right? It's the fun, it's the happiness, it's the joy, it's the laughter, it's the excitement, it's the this is Rocket League. It's a video game. We're talking about a video game. It's a movement that is inspiring fun around the world. It's bringing communities together. It's really cool. So the more you can kind of be vibrant, to your point about having fun, and like as you said, like there it can be tricky if any commentator is trying to put themselves into uh, uh trying to do too many things and fitting themselves into a puzzle piece that could get boring or rigid, where it's like, it is important to to have fun. If you're commentating one day and all of a sudden you're thinking to yourself, wow, this I'm not having that fun. I mean, that you don't want that. It is so important to be enjoying yourself and to show that while you're commentating. And that's something I want to bring up too, because I was watching this VOD and you were doing that. You guys are doing that. It felt like you guys are having fun. So I want to emphasize, hold on to that, man. Hold on to that.
I'll
And
yeah.
it's a great thing. Like, when you're smiling on while you're commentating, other people feel that, or when you're laughing, so it can be really good to not overwhelm the broadcast with. Everything is about timing and quantity and quality. But really having that, it's almost like just a deep down feeling while you're doing it, just holding on to that feeling of fun, excitement, like the first time you did it. The more you can hold on to that, the better.
I think genuinely some of the most fun broadcasts that I've listened to were the ones where it doesn't even feel like an official broadcast. It feels like it's just two friends watching and talking about Rocket
Yep.
League and hyping it up when necessary.
Yep, I agree. And I think it's an esports thing too. It's not something you see as much in traditional sports, but back to my point about that that scale, I think that definitely applies to esports, and that's what makes esports so cool. It's like a lot of the broadcasts that we see are friends hanging out and watching Rocket League, and we can relate to that, and it's fun, and we laugh. Um, Something I would go back and watch. I know I mentioned StarCraft before, but two of my favorite commentators who I'll watch other commentators to learn and get better. Um, so in StarCraft, there's a tournament called the GSL, Global StarCraft League. It's a tournament that's been around for over 10 years. It happens in South Korea. There are two commentators who were born in North America, and they ended up moving to South Korea to work on a broadcast full time, and now they're living there, and they've been living there and working on GSL for a very long time, and you have to stay up late to watch them live. But their names are Tasteless and Artosis, two commentators who have been really good friends, and they have a wonderful style, and I think they're regarded as two of the best commentators in the scene that we've ever seen in the history of esports. So I would recommend going and checking that out, even if you don't know StarCraft. You like video games,
I'll be fine.
You're gonna like it. And then kind of pay attention to them. I think they can be a great duo to learn from. But to the point of like, look, we're having fun, and that's what makes esports pretty great, and that's what people look for a lot of the time is tuning in to see how much fun we're having, and we are. And I'll be
Yeah,
honest,
for sure.
for me, like that might be one of the hardest things, probably as the host or whatever. It's probably one of the most important things that I bring to the table is that excitement, that energy, that hype, that fun, and bringing it to the people around me so the broadcast can feel it. And that can be one of the most difficult things because first of all, I'm a person, I have a life, I have my own feelings and thoughts and things happening that I need to manage, whatever, that I need to kind of separate from the broadcast or whatever. Like when that camera goes on, you're axle toss, you're I'm the fun guy, and it's so important to have that and to show that. But the tricky thing is also is the long hours. If you enjoy this pursuit and you continue with it, which it sounds like you are and you will, and you're good enough to do it, you're gonna have shows that are incredibly long, from an online standpoint to a live event standpoint. So one of the most grueling tournaments I've ever done was DreamHack. Any DreamHack, those guys are ridiculous, but it's a lot of fun because a lot
Yeah,
of games are good. It's important, but the hours are insane. DreamHack in Germany, I think it was Leipzig,
Leipzig. Yeah.
where the final was G2 against PSG, and PSG won in Game 7 overtime. So sick. Anyway, I think there's been a couple tournaments in Leipzig, but the point is, uh, no, there's just been one. The point is, like, as the host, and this applies to RLCS. So RLCS on Saturdays, the show starts at noon. On Sundays, the show starts at 9. And actually, the shows have gotten longer because there's more games. But the broadcast would basically go from noon to 6. So it's like a 6-hour broadcast. And on Sundays, it'd go from 9 to 3. 9 to 3 or 4. DreamHack, it might start at 9. And as talent, your call time, and I'm going to try to get this changed because, my God, as I've said, it's so important to be mentally there and
Yeah, 100%.
to be in your form, dude. Because if you're not in form and you're not feeling good, it's miserable.
I
So
mean, yeah, for
they,
me, like
yeah, go ahead.
especially having to do it in English rather than Dutch is sometimes an extra step. And I've had
Yeah,
casts where I was slightly tired, and I ended the broadcast, and I was like, "Oh my god, this was
yeah,
horrible.
man.
How do people listen to this?"
It can be grueling, and but that's something you have to work on is like, can you be perfect when it is grueling? And you
Hmm.
have to be. You kind of have to be. So like, and call times again. I don't know why. Like our call times are like 2 hours before the show starts, and it's probably because one day someone was late, and then now they
Hmm.
have to do it for everyone because someone, it's like always one person who ruins it or something. But like our call time is literally 2 hours before you
That's
even
so
start,
stupid.
dude. So like, as I said, like for DreamHack starting at 8, you have to get there at 6 in the morning. And guess what? DreamHack, the show, goes maybe till like 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the evening. So if you're getting there at 6 in the morning and you're there till 10, it can be so grueling. And then RLCS, we start at noon on Saturday. We start at 9 on Sunday. Have to be there at 10 on Saturday. Have to be there at 7 in the morning. You have
Hmm.
to be up at 6 in the morning. Get your shower, grab a bagel, get to the studio, get there at 7, start the show at 9, and then you're going until 3, 4 o'clock. So the point is that is one of the hardest things to really figure out. But the more you can practice and the more you can be aware of it, the better. Um, where you're gonna have long days, but it is so critical to be. For me, like if you're watching RLCS, if you tell me that I didn't look happy or I look tired or something, that is the worst thing for me to hear. That means
Yeah.
I am failing at my job. I need to be the most happy, excited person, even though I've done it for years, even though I've had thousands of hours of on camera experience. And in a studio environment, there's no one else. It's just you and the camera. It's not like there's fans. It's not like there's a whole crowd. Sure, you have hundreds of thousands of people watching online or whatever, but there's no one there. So it's like you have to be able to bring this energy from yourself, even though it can be the most monotonous, even though you've done it before so many times, even though you got up at 5 in the morning to be able to make it here, even though you just had a full show the day before, even though you started at 8 a.m. today, but your last segment's at 10 p.m. Like my first segment's at 8 a.m., my last segment's at 10 p.m. the same day. You have to be perfect. You have to be, so I just wanted to bring that up because that it's very tricky, but you just have to be strong. and
So
and
is that do you think so two questions about that, right? Well, the first question is, do you would you say that the person that sits at the desk is a bit of a persona, or do you think that's really you? That's my first question. And the second question would be, how do you actually do it? Is it just constant pressure, putting yourself into that position where you do have to do those long days, or have you done anything to actually practice it?
um I think in anything that you do, you have to be ready for the long haul. So I don't know the best way to practice that, but for example, when I was growing up, I did track and cross country. I had 2 days, and I was good enough to uh, get a spot on the university team. I ran a 4:21 mile in high school, so I was pretty good. But I had to get up. I had some grueling schedules, so it's like there are things you can do to practice by having grueling schedules and like simulating what that would be like, I guess. Um,
Hmm.
so I think that might be the best way to practice, but also like every time I'm on camera, so there's some things you can do in your mind almost. Some things you can some like warm ups, I guess. There are various things you can do before getting on camera, whether that's kind of meditating or whether that's listening to a particular song or listening to music or whatever. But the important thing is you want to be your question about persona versus you, and that is a very interesting question. I have to think about that a little bit. I almost want to say it's both, even though it's a horrible cop out answer. Um,
Yeah, but I think that's
because
both
like it
true.
is me, it is me, it is like, and if you talk to anyone who meets me IRL, like I am like how I am on camera. Like if you meet me in person, I'm not going to be some boring. I'm going to be excited, and I am like I'm a happy guy. Like I'm happy to talk. Somewhat extrovert. I'm an introvert and an extrovert. But if I'm like when I'm in the studio all the time, I it gets boring. You miss crowds or whatever. So the moment I can go to an event and talk to people is one of the best things. So I'd say, it's kind of a persona in that you're trying to match the same part of yourself every time you're up there. Because look, I'm not happy all the time. I'm sad sometimes. I'm just another person, So like, yeah, in a way, it is a persona, but at the same time, it is me. Um, so yeah, back to like things you can do to like really make sure you're there. I got some professional coaching one day, and something that was recommended to me was think of one of the best memories that you've had in your life, right? You think through what is the moment that has made you the happiest in your life, or what are those moments that fill you with excitement and make you just so happy that you think about. Those are the scenes that you can play in your head and that you can think about just before you're going on camera, right? Like let's say your director is in your ear counting you down, that's something maybe you reflect upon. Like for me, that might be the feeling of being on stage in front of a huge crowd and about to host a show. That fills me with like adrenaline, happiness, excitement, a little bit of fear. but it that's something maybe I reflect on, or I think about my family or something. That's things that you reflect on just before starting, so you can try to get your mind space to be exactly where you want it to be. To be, oh, hey, what's up, guys? I'm Axel Toss. We got another awesome show, the Rocket League Championship Series. So yeah, that's what I would say. And it again, it's hard to kind of what I was mentioning. One of the hardest things is just retaining that the whole day. I guess as a host in particular, commentators have a
Mhm.
little bit more breaks, but even as a commentator, like that's something you're doing. You might have a segment early in the day, you might have a segment later, but you still want to bring the best of yourself to that moment, no matter how you're feeling, no matter what call you just had with someone who's upset with you, no matter what else is going on, just bringing yourself back to that happy place so that you can be in your best form.
I think that's actually a very good tip for me as well, because I think probably like the most important moment for a caster is like the first 15 or so seconds, because that's when some people already decide to just mute you and just to watch the gameplay and not listen to the casters, which I mean, it's fine if they want to do that, but you need to start off strong rather than still getting into it. And I think this would be a very good way to get yourself perfectly set up for a great start.
Definitely, definitely. Um, every moment you're on camera is a very focused moment, but you want to deliver the best possible in that moment so that everyone watching in that moment can have the best experience possible. So self management, you're really managing yourself, so you're really focusing on that and optimizing those moments because you don't want to you don't want to be sad on camera. You don't want to have a low moment on camera. You want to really make sure that you're fulfilling your objective of making it the best broadcast possible. And as I said earlier, between like esports and traditional sports, I think that's something a lot of us do well in esports. Is we were really delivering such a unique and cool experience and
Mhm.
making it fun and exciting for everyone around us and everyone watching. Some people can be having the most horrible days and then they tune in and they see you being happy and excited and laughing a little bit and it can make their day that much better. So that's something really good to focus on.
And one other question I was going to ask is, obviously you've done a lot in StarCraft as well. Do you think it's beneficial to have your finger, so to say, in different sort of esports and try them out, even if you don't know as much about that game or that scene?
I would say yes. And excuse me. And I was going to ask you, um, what is your background, by the way, before doing Rocket League casting?
Nothing. Like that is so I started with coaching and that's about it. Like
So
I've
what
played
about yeah? What other games have you
Le-
played?
yeah, so I've played League of Legends until I was gold every season and never really touched it more. And that is one thing that I do have where I've recently started to play CS:GO myself a little bit, and but the biggest problem that I have with it is the fact that I think my strongest point is the analytical side, right? So during a cast in Rocket League, I can very quickly pinpoint where a team is making mistakes or what they should improve on in order to get better due to the coaching that I've done. But then I feel like if I move into a different game, then my strongest point suddenly just crumbles, and that makes me anxious about doing it in the first place.
So it depends what you want to do. If you love Rocket League, and you really want to be in it, um, the best thing you can do is just have the consistent gigs going on, no matter how small, even if you're doing it yourself on your own stream or
Hmm.
whatever. And that's not too bad. That's not too hard to do. But yes, I would recommend exploring other games because I'm sure that you do enjoy other games. I'm certain of it.
Hmm.
Um, so I think first it can be good just just to diversify yourself and your life, to avoid any monotony. It's good to have hobbies, whatever, other things, hobbies, other games, so on and so forth. But then from a professional standpoint, yes, it is good uh, to look into other games depending on what you want to do, and then potentially be involved with them. And I think it can be helpful towards your Rocket League commentary. Even I think a good example is Jorby. Jorby very skilled Rocket League commentator. Uh,
Hmm.
he he really branched out and was doing play by play in other games, and he was doing it really well, and he got pretty involved in some other scenes, and I think it only made him better in Rocket League, and I think he knew that too. So I think it can be good just to for practice to put yourself in another environment, and of course you want to enjoy it. So I guess another question there would be: are there any games coming out that you're looking at or you're interested in, or into the
I mean,
future, or a particular genre, a game from the past that you, if they remastered it, you'd be into anything?
that's the thing. I've always been bad at video games, and then Rocket League came out, and I was suddenly good. And I'm a very competitive person, so I do not enjoy getting my ass handed to me. And then Rocket League was suddenly that switched around, which is why I started to enjoy it, and kind of kept grinding it. And now, like I've been grand champ since season, I don't know, 3 or something. Um, but with
Damn.
other games, I feel like it's always been like. Uh, so for example, Valorant right now is something that I think is interesting. I'm also enjoying like the sort of strategic aspects that I think sometimes Rocket League kind of lacks in a sense, where there's more conscious decision making going on that you can look into. But then I'd have a hard time because I don't feel like I'm necessarily that good at the game myself. I don't know how to actually excel in commentating about it.
For Valorant, or
Yeah, yeah, for Valorant, for example. So in Rocket League, I don't know if you know the Eternal J, but he's a Dutch bubble scene caster, and he does a lot of play by play. But I think the highest rank that he's ever gotten in Rocket League is like platinum or something.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
he's not good at the game,
Okay, I
but
see what you're saying.
he's so convincing
Yeah.
on the broadcast, and like I don't know how.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, I guess first of all, technically, you don't have to be good at the game to do well commentating. Technically, for me personally, I whatever I work on, I want to be as good as I can. I don't know. It's a principle. Like I want to be as good as I can
Mhm.
at the game. Um, I think the more you're kind of involved with the community, the better. And then if you're talking about the game, generally you're going to enjoy the game, which means you're going to enjoy playing it. So I think it all kind of I think it all kind of fits together. Where if you enjoy the game and you enjoy it enough to commentate it, it's probably in your best interest to put as many hours as possible into that game. And let me give you a somewhat elaborate response here and just discuss my history of games, because that might be helpful for your question, what you're
The
talking about. Because my answer is absolutely, yeah, do different games depending on what you enjoy. You might not enjoy certain games, so don't necessarily pursue them. Like for me, for example, like Counter Strike. I like it. I appreciate it. I think the esport is wonderful. I can watch it, and I've worked on it. I've done shows with it. I've talked to pros. I know some pros in the scene. We're friends, but as a game, for me personally, I've just not really enjoyed it that much, like playing. And partly that, like as far as the games that I prefer, and that's why I'm not as into Valorant, right? I'm not as into Rainbow Six, and it's like that just because of that mode, right? Where it's like, okay, you have a life and then you die, and then you're watching others, and then it's round based, and it's like, look, I'm not as into that. Rocket League, it's real time all the time. You're playing all the time. Whatever, it's great. StarCraft 1v1 is insane. It's very hard, uh, but there's no, it's nonstop action. Apex Legends. I really enjoy battle royales. I played the original battle royale that was a mod for Arma, and then PUBG came out, and I played that, and then Apex came out, and I played that, and then Fortnite came out, and I did not play that. But I love Apex. Like Apex is sick. It's a sick
Mhm.
BR, so I play it a ton. Will I work on it? Maybe. But I have a ton of hours in it. Um, so really quickly going through my game history, let's see. I started with, so actually going way back when I was 15 years old. I heard about a game called I'm 29 right now, by the way. So 14 years ago, uh, high school sophomore game came out called Kart Rider in the beta. I'm like, okay, what's that? A friend was telling me about that. He's like, oh, it's a kart racing game. I'm like, oh, that sounds stupid. Let me, I'll try it. And I go home, I download the beta. This game called Cartwriter, and I play it, and I'm into it as a high school sophomore. I'm like, okay, this is cool. And then in that moment, I started becoming more involved with it, and that was actually the first time I produced something on YouTube. Was when I was 16 years old for this game Cartwriter, and it's still on YouTube to this day. Uh, I have Cartwriter content on YouTube from when I was in high school. Um, Real quick story about this game. It's actually really big in Korea. You know, esports in South Korea has been the mainstay. Has been there for much longer time. I think the rest of the world is kind of still learning from South Korea and how they've approached a lot of these video games and how they've constructed different infrastructure for esports and how they've brought communities together and how game developers handle it, how the government sees it, blah 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 blah. But Car Raider came out in originally in South Korea, and actually it has had a vibrant scene as an esport in Korea for the last 15 years. I didn't know this when I was a kid making videos about it. I learned it as time went along. Um, but I I was investigating this game because it came out and then it left. It came out in North America for like 6 months in the beta, and then they gave up on it. It went away. And I've been investigating this game, and it got to the point where because I became a video game person or whatever, I actually was able to be invited to the headquarters of the company that makes the game, Nexon in Nexon America in Los Angeles, and they invited me to come check it out because I worked on a different game called Lawbreakers for the same company, and I pestered them about it. I'm like, "Where's Cartwriter?" This was like a few years ago, and I'm talking about this game that came out 10 years before, which I knew had a vibrant scene around the world. And I got them to tell me that they were remastering it and they're bringing it back, and they brought the beta to North America late last year. So that game is looking to come out again this year. So that's a game I'm looking at. First of all, I think it's a wonderful game. Second of all, I think it has stupid esports potential because stupid as in amazing because of the scene that it's had
The past.
in Korea and around the world. And it's almost as old as Counter Strike. It's just as old as StarCraft. You know, these long standing games that I don't think are going anywhere. So Kart Rider's up there, and for me, you know, that's a game I played when I was a kid. I'm still into it. I still love the game. I'm in touch with the president of Nexon because I want to be in the ground floor with this, just like I was with Rocket League. So yeah, other games. Let's see. So Kart Rider, that was just like a silly thing that happened when I was a kid, but somehow I'm able to still be involved with it, which to me is a particular thrill. You know, it's like it's a childhood dream almost. I got into StarCraft, real time strategy. So Kart Rider is kind of a racing game, and you know, as a commentator, you can kind of diversify the genres you're working on, or you can stick with the same genre, kind of whatever you want. I try to diversify my genres. Kart Rider, racing game, arcade racing, super crazy. It's not like sim racing like Forza or Gran Turismo, which is all just parallel to what you see in the world. It is you got carts. The carts go super fast. The tracks are insane. It's a ton of fun. StarCraft, real time strategy, a little bit slower. 1v1. Kart Rider is free for all. 8 people on a line or 4v4. 8 people racing against each other, or 4v4 team based. StarCraft, one versus one, real time strategy, mouse keyboard. Very strategic. A ton of depth. Incredibly difficult game. Okay, I'm into that. So I've done a lot of work on StarCraft. I've worked on Halo. I've done more hosting in Halo, but I played Halo when I was a kid. First person shooter, con,
Yeah.
controller,
Classic.
whatever. And I've been involved with the Halo scene. And so for me, it's like okay, the more I can work on, the better. But I want to have those genuine attachments to it. So like Halo, I played when I was a kid. Great, let's get involved with it. StarCraft, I've just been into that also since I was a kid. Kart Rider, uh, beautiful. I randomly stumbled upon it, and now it has a chance to really go global, which I hope to be involved with, which I think can be really cool. Then you have Rocket
So,
League, which is incredibly physics based, less
mhm,
depth as far as RTS, what StarCraft had, but the depth in Rocket League comes with the physics and the
mhm.
impossibility of the game is what is super amazing, which is the skill ceiling that we still don't know where it is, and the pros are constantly stretching that. So those are just a few characteristics, a bunch of different games that I'm into in my own way, uh, that I've been attached to. Oh, and then one quick one, I guess, Auto Battlers. Uh, um, I worked on the Auto Chess Invitational in China last year, $1 million prize pool, and that's Auto Battler, which is a new genre, which is pretty cool, which I'm looking into, and I have potential gigs in Teamfight Tactics, so I've been playing some Teamfight Tactics. So it's like I like the
Mhm.
auto battler genre, strategic in its own way, it's unique in its own way. So I'm gonna play that too. So like I have my
So
own list of all these games, and I'm not against you breaking out and having your own list too. I think that's perfectly fine for anyone.
and these opportunities, right? Do, do people ask you, or how do you approach branching out like that? Is it just a lot of socialization that you've done in the past, or?
Hmm. I would say probably three main things. Um, Networking for sure, like people who know me, who I've worked with in the past, who know I'm reliable and they feel confident to bring me on. That's something I've tried to build for myself. Is like, look,
Yeah.
if you hire me, guess what? I'm not going to make a mistake. I'm not going to mess up. Go try to find a clip of me like really making a horrible mess up in RLCS. I flubbed like 2 or 3 times, and I remember each one vividly, and it made me feel horrible. But it probably wasn't that bad. Like I am someone reliable who has years of experience who will not make a mistake. Is kind of what I want to present. And for me, I've been involved in enough things that I will get a phone call or an email about something because of that. So that's kind of what I've built. Um, Another thing is from people I know to people watching. Uh, you never know when that can turn into something. And then I also have an agency, so I have management or whatever that represents me, and sometimes people approach them for people that they need, and then I get submitted as someone who could be good, and then I'm picked to be part of whatever that is. So
Mhm.
there's a few different ways to approach it. I guess for you, um, kind of the more you do, the more you'll get noticed. And honestly, when I first started, like kind of to your point about something you're doing tonight, and then something and the VOD that you sent me, kind of more community based stuff. That is definitely important. Like when I first started, it would be a lot of reaching out to the more community tournaments to try to be involved. A good example would be like IEM, ESL. That's an Intel company, global company. They have global championships, but guess what? They also have North America Community Cups. So if I
Yeah.
go and try to commentate a North American Community Cup for ESL, a little go for SE2, okay, great. They might appreciate that. I might meet someone and they might be like, hey, look, what about commentating the Go for SE2 North America finals? We've seen you've been doing North America tournaments. Why don't you commentate the finals online? I'm like, okay, I'll do a little North America final tournament. That's great. And then they're like, okay, why don't you do the North America bigger final that's actually a live event? Okay, why don't you come out to the World Championship? So it's like setting all that up is great. And the best thing to do there is just engaging. Obviously, depends on the time that you have, but
Mhm.
engaging at that smaller level, and then you don't, who knows what that might turn into. Another good example is like DreamHack. Let's say you get in, you come to a little DreamHack qualifier, and then boom, you might get noticed, and then you might meet someone, and then you might get invited to cast something a little bit bigger for DreamHack. So it's like just evaluating that, looking out for those opportunities. A couple quick things too that I want to bring up, especially for myself that I've been looking at. Tencent. Tencent, Alibaba, right? Two of the biggest companies in the world. Sure, they're based out of China, but they're two of the biggest companies that are involved with video games things. Tencent, I mean, just I don't even have to talk about it because of how much ownership they have in pretty much any video game that's out there, especially in the
Mhm.
North American market. They're huge. Tencent, they just created an esports division and they just expanded to North America and they're expanding around the world. So imagine if you work on a Tencent game. Rocket League is a Tencent game, right? So that's something that could build into something bigger. And then Alibaba, one of the biggest companies, they have a dedicated esports division, and they're more focused on events. They came out with a tournament called WESG, which was like the first tournament that offered millions of dollars just out of nowhere because it's Alibaba and they can just throw that money around. They ended up doing national qualifiers for this tournament that no one knew about that was offering millions of dollars. You had pros come out of retirement from every direction because they're like, oh, wait, I retired, but wait, there's this easy tournament that I can just sign up for that I can win a ton of money, which is why I laugh at people who retire. It doesn't make any sense to me. But but yeah, like you never know when that stuff's gonna pop up. But if you can be
Yeah.
that guy that can be like, look, I'll cover your qualifier. Look, you have a Netherlands qualifier. Bring it on here, Alibaba. I'll
Mhm.
do it. And then they're like, oh wow, you're pretty good. Why don't you come cast our world championship and we'll give you $10,000 or something, right? Like so, it's like you kind of just got to look out for that. And when I first started, it was just reaching out. That's what's cool about esports. You can literally message anyone. So trying to work on those community tournaments or trying to find those tournaments that really build into something bigger, and
Yeah.
then try to get started on the small side of those things and get noticed by the admins and whatnot.
I think that I recently got my breakthrough getting to the so last year I was invited to do the Rocket Baguette Rising Star series, which is
It's sick.
I think the biggest Rocket League bubble scene tournament that we have in Europe, and that kind of just evolved into now doing the weekly quite often. Once again, being involved in that tournament, and I think for me the next step would be trying to get on rival series, but unfortunately they're not the best with communication.
Yeah. Hey, man. I mean, the thing is, you're in Europe, and I
Yeah.
don't know if I'm out of the loop, but it feels like there's not a huge scene in Europe for like commentators. Like okay,
It's
there's
hard.
Johnny Boy. Okay, there's Johnny Boy. There's Shogun. There's Gregan. But like I guess Cole and Stumpy, I suppose, but like it's not a
The thing is, right,
huge depth chart there. So I feel like there could be a lot of opportunity in Europe for a Rocket League
the
commentator. Like,
biggest issue is the fact that to actually have it be worthwhile is nearly impossible within Rocket League, because right now there are two European opportunities to actually get paid for cast, which is the Rocket Baguette, which just started like half a year ago. They didn't offer a payment before for English cast because they only had the French one, and then there is the rival who does the B streams for the rival series. Those are the only paid opportunities within Rocket League. Everything else is very volunteer based. So there's a lot of opportunity to cast tournaments, but the actual top of Europe is very, very condensed, and it's literally only a handful, uh, uh, like a handful of
yeah,
people, because they just get asked for everything.
hmm, interesting. I think that I think that happens. That's happened in many scenes also, and that's something I've had trouble navigating with. Like for example, I did a lot of StarCraft, but the problem with StarCraft for me, while I hope that I'm good at what I do, I was like probably number 9 or 10 on the depth chart of StarCraft commentators and talent in the world, probably, which is pretty far down the line when it comes to gigs. I might have
Exactly.
even been a little lower than that. Even though I was fine at my job, it's not nothing bad about me. It's just how good everyone else was. And that was early StarCraft days. So Rocket League right now, that sounds like opportunity to me because again, as I said, like I only see it growing, man. Like I don't like this example you gave me about this soccer team in the Netherlands that's doing an event. That is like absolutely perfect. That could be your Pandora's box. Just that alone
For
for resounding success and the national hero of Netherlands, Rocket League commentator, um, Juicy. That could be that platform for you to become a legend in the Netherlands, right? Like I don't know, but it could. Like stuff like that is huge and it's great. And as far as Europe, obviously, so I just did a tournament. I've been putting on tournaments in North America, but that's mostly because I've been engaging with North America sponsors. It's where I live. Blah blah blah. I time zones. I probably wouldn't work as much on Europe things, but that doesn't make me think that there's not opportunity there. Like I still think there's a ton of stuff that can happen or that will happen and that is happening. One example is I guess what Johnny Boy's doing. Like what about like I know Johnny Boy's somehow found a lot of money and sponsors, which is great.
yeah,
Someone's got to do
it's
it in
ridiculous.
Europe, So it's like who's going to work on that? It's not just going to be Johnny Boy solo commentating the whole thing. He's got to be bringing in commentators, right? That's something I would pursue, maybe.
No, he didn't. He did
What?
everything on his own. Yeah.
Yo,
So that was the European Invitational. He did everything on his own. So the only real thing that does happen, which is sort of with what you do in NA, is Dazzering Skirmish. So Dazzering Skirmish last year really uh, um, popped off, and so the reason is there's one guy called Incivic. I don't know if you're
Yep.
aware of who he is. Yeah.
Yep.
So basically, he's just been funding the European scene.
Yep.
Literally, he's the reason we got these tournaments and the hype around it. And so for Dazzling stream, I think last year I did one of the B streams, which was quite fun, because it's also the only opportunity for us as European casters to really commentate on the highest level, right? Because we don't get the opportunity to cast RLCS except for like a very select few, which is basically Johnny Boy and Shogun.
Yeah, and I feel like it's inevitable for Europe Studio to pop up. I don't know how it hasn't happened already. I don't know, dude. I promise I'm not being
You don't
overly
know.
optimistic, dude. I'm not being overly optimistic. This stuff, it should happen. Like everything logically, as long as Sonics and Epic doesn't do anything super stupid, like there's no reason it's not going to expand in the next year or
The
two
problem is
years.
it should have happened.
You're right. You're right about that.
And then I think that is in general like the biggest concern that the entirety of the European scene has, where we've our grassroots is actually sick with the Rocket Baguette series going on. So basically, I don't know. Are you aware of that tournament?
Somewhat.
So the sixth thing that they've done is basically they have four regional competitions. So they've got one for Germany, Netherlands. They've got one for Spain, Portugal. They've got one for France, and then they've
Mm-hmm.
got one for the rest of Europe. And all of those feed three contenders into the Star Series, which is then two groups of six battling out multiple weeks into a playoff stage. And then all those regional qualifiers also have like qualifiers. So it's a giant tournament. And like that kind of stuff gets set up, but then Silence doesn't pounce on it. They're not like, holy shit, this is amazing. We're gonna fund this. We're gonna make sure that this uh, goes the way that we want it to, and then can actually feed into RLRS, for example. Like they've got nothing that they go into depth in Europe. Same as like we've had a European University Cup that was just finished, where the mainstream sometimes got over like a 5K viewers or something. Like it was actually quite well watched. But then no talk about psionics like anywhere, not a shout out on Twitter that this is happening, not a reach out behind the scenes to like be like, hey, you guys are doing a sick job here, can we do something? Like not at all. Like it's impossible to even get into a conversation with them.
Hmm. So I think that's probably bandwidth on Sonic's end. I think that they
Very much so.
are overwhelmed with North America, probably based on how big they are, and they're probably like, okay, let's. They're probably like, you know what? Let's take the lowest common denominator or something of Europe, and let's just focus on a few big Europe tournaments, and that's it. We don't have the bandwidth or energy to try to help with anything else. That's what it feels like. And
Mm-hmm.
it's nothing. It's a tough situation to be in. I think for Psionics, because it's like they're not a huge company, but could you imagine, to your point, a concerted effort in Europe to really embellish and grow and glorify or prop up this all these different things happening. And the thing is, like, Europe has one of the biggest advantages in all the European soccer or football that happens, and that has ridiculous fandom, and that has had teams buy into RLCS. So it's like there's a lot of natural things in Europe that can really make it uh, really grow and create lots of opportunities. I have I'm almost wondering if it's partly advertisement based, where like Psyonix has some super agreements with some North American entities, where it becomes a very big focus in North America that doesn't apply as much in Europe as far as advertisement relationships and so on and so forth. But at the same time, it's not like there's a lack of massive sponsors and entities that could be engaged with in
For
Europe,
sure.
from the big
I think
soccer teams to the universities to these community initiatives that are
mhm.
successful.
then the the biggest issue I think with the entire thing is that um, they decide. Okay, so the Europe scene doesn't really get that much support, which is not necessarily bad at all. Like that is fine, but then they're really bottlenecking it too by saying, okay, but you can only have like this type of cash reward. If it's more than
Hmm.
this, we need to be consulted. And then they often say no to really big European initiatives as well. Where it's like, okay, so but which one do you want? Do you want us to set it up ourselves because we can, but then do not stop us, or do you want to set it up everything yourself, which is fine too, but you're not doing that?
Yeah. I think these are struggles everyone's dealing with. Uh, so in this, it applies to every game and every game developer. There's a lot you don't have control over, um, and it can be frustrating. And if things are happening that doesn't align with what you're thinking, but you just kind of got to deal with it right now and just keep an eye out for opportunities and look at different games. And honestly, I guess do what you can. I mean, anyone can set up their own tournament. Anyone can get together a community to be within the guidelines or whatever. But I'm going to be an optimist. I'm sorry people give me a hard time, but I still feel like whether there has to be someone who goes in there, whether it's Epic coming in and doing something, there's going to be I really feel like there's it's going to be hard to hold back Rocket League from really expanding in Europe.
For sure.
So I would definitely keep an eye on it and stay invested in it. But at the same time, as I said earlier, other games are fine, just depending on what you're into. How long have you been pursuing all this?
So actively pursuing, I would say since February, January, February.
Cool, man. And the thing is, like, it's still early for you, and but you have a lot of good things going. I would say it's like developing your brand and whatnot. Whether it's
Hmm.
between Twitter and YouTube, like having something consistent that you love to do, or whether it's if is that a coaching session for someone, is that commentating someone's replay, like I don't know what it would look like for you, but maybe finding things like that are staples almost can be good to increase your brand, I guess, if you see anything like that you're really into. um Otherwise, as I said, dude, like I think the local opportunities are going to be the ripest now and in the near future. And I'm going to be selfish and say, look, Juicy, I want you to have your finger on the pulse of Netherlands esports. You're going to become some sort of manager or something in some esports entity there in Netherlands, and they're going to need Axeltas to come help with an event. And you're going to be like, all right, let's get
I
Axeltas to the
got you.
Netherlands and let's have a party and let's talk about Rocket League or something. So I'm gonna need your help on that. I'm gonna need you to emerge to the top of the Netherlands esports scene, Rocket League especially. Get all that under your control, and then invite me to hang out. If that
Just
is
go to
okay, if
Twitch
that's
one if
okay
it
with
doesn't
you.
get cancelled.
Oh yeah, is that in Netherlands?
Yeah, it was supposed to be. So it was supposed to be
Did you go
next
to the
weekend in
final in
Amsterdam.
Amsterdam? Did you go to the
Yes,
RLCS final?
I I went to London too.
Whoa, did we
It was
meet?
the best thing. I think we did have a quick conversation, yeah. But then again, I talked with everyone, so and I doubt you would remember me as well because I think you also talked with a shit ton of people at those events. But Amsterdam was the best. Like
Mm-hmm.
London was amazing. Don't get me wrong, but for me, Amsterdam, the fact that it it felt like the entire venue was a family.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Totally.
honestly, everyone was just talking with everyone. The pros were just walking around and sitting at the exact same place where everyone else was sitting. And I remember Flipside winning, and then 10 minutes later they were outside with the rest of us having a smoke. Like that was so crazy to me back then, and oh, I love that. I love that at first thing. That was
Dude,
great.
I first of all, Netherlands is amazing. It seems like a good group of people. So good job, whatever you're doing over there. It seems like a good group. I mean, Amsterdam is such a cool place. It's definitely one of my favorite events. Just everyone's so friendly, and it's just cool. I'm a fan. It like if there's a country I was forced to live in, I probably wouldn't mind in the Netherlands. I think I'm
You'd be
so,
welcome on my
yeah,
couch.
or Ireland. I'd like to visit
Ireland,
Ireland.
beautiful.
Be
Yeah.
cool. But so that's stuff that happens, and I don't necessarily know how to prepare you for it or whatever. But I
Hmm.
guess something to be aware of, and I guess it has something to do with like being confident in yourself. Because at the end of the day, if everything goes wrong and it's just you, can you maintain the show? Can you stay in your right mind and figure it out? And if the answer is yes, then you are doing so well for yourself. Because the moment something bad does happen or something unexpected happens, you're going to be prepared for it. uh, yeah, just sometimes things will happen that you just don't expect. So just really being confident in yourself and being prepared is very important. Really, you really got to be, focused on what you're doing. Even the you might have the most ridiculous things happening around you, but you just have to be super focused on your task.
It's weird because in this sense, it's with casting. If you freeze up for one moment, the longer you freeze up for, the more likely it's going to get worse, in the sense that you start stressing out about the fact that you're freezing up, and then you just kind of tumble down this hill.
Hmm. Yeah, I get. I'll speak towards that a little bit. I've personally not ever like frozen up per se, but I have had moments of like extreme nervousness. Like the first
Hmm.
time I was in a studio and first time I was hearing the countdown in my head. And again, kind of what I mentioned earlier about, having those happy memories, just like every time you're on camera, making it a similar experience, right? Where you're thinking about the same memories, you're entering with that happiness and that vibrance and that energy, and then you feel comfortable and cool and collected. Another thing is I mentioned like mistakes. Like I have made a few mistakes, but to your point there, like let's say you freeze up and then you kind of marinate on it and then you're even more doomed. One of the most important things I think that you can really understand and utilize. Let's say you do mess up. Let's say you say something wrong. Whatever you did in that moment was probably about half a second of time. Half a second to a second of time where that mess up happened. So let's say, I wonder if I can do an example. I have a coffee cup in front of me. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Axel Toss, and I have a coffee bowl. Oh, I mean cup. So like obviously I'm setting myself up for not great things happening just by that whatever just happened there, right? So let's say let me redo that. Ladies and gentlemen, here I have a coffee bowl, but here we have some amazing players getting ready to go. So it's like really quickly changing the subject is like something super easy and simple. So if you ever make a mistake, like don't even dwell on it for a second. Like move on to the next thing because it is such a narrow span of time, and the amount of people who will recognize it and like be mad about it is nothing. It is absolutely nothing. So it's effectively it's not even a mistake. It's like it never happened, and that's how you kind of have to go with it. So if you ever make a mistake, just move on. Move on to whatever you're saying. Don't hesitate on it. Don't try to correct yourself. I mean, unless it's like really like you said the wrong team, and then you can make a joke about it or something. Like you say fairy instead of flip side, or I don't know, where there are obvious moments where you want to correct yourself, but if it's just a little flub or a little thing you said wrong, you don't want to focus on it. You just want to move on. No one's going to remember. No one's going to think about it. Just move on.
I think that's fair. Yeah,
Super
I think
fast.
there's definitely been moments where 10 seconds after someone said something, I was like, wait a minute, that was not correct. But just because of the fact they moved on so quickly, you don't really
Yeah,
notice
and
it
and
at the time.
if it's an obvious something that should be corrected for the integrity of the stream, then yes, there are moments where you should bring it up. But 9 times out of 10, it's going to be something silly, inconsequential. Like for example, if you're doing play by play, like we've seen a couple clips where some RLCS casters have done a little flubs in their play by play, but they're it's for your own mindset too. You don't want to dwell on it at all. at all. You want to move on. Like maybe afterwards you go back and you're like, okay, I made a mistake. I don't want to make that mistake anymore, and you learn from it. But in the moment, it's just like you don't want to dwell at all. Your focus is the action on the screen, and the focus is your co-commentator, and your focus is the audience. There's plenty of stuff to talk about, unless it's obviously, as you said, a damning change or just a mistake that absolutely must be clarified. Like you mess up
Mhm.
the prize pool, or you mess up a team name or something like that. But in general, just stick with your flow and move on, because those little mistakes, they happen. Okay, that does it. If you've been listening this long, I am super impressed and thank you. I'm always open to more feedback about any content you'd like to see from me. There are many ways to reach out to me. You can check out all that in the description. Thanks for watching and listening.